I never thought I'd end up in a war with my neighbor, and I certainly didn't think it would be over something as stupid as a package. But here we are, and let me tell you, it all started so innocently. It started with a doorbell ringing and the excitement of a delivery. Ah, the joy of getting a package in the mail. It's like Christmas, except you paid for everything in it. I had just moved into my new house in this sleepy suburban neighborhood, hopping for peace and quiet, maybe a little garden to tend to, and like everyone else, waiting for my Amazon packages to arrive without any issues. But from the moment I stepped foot on my front porch, I could feel the tension. It wasn't the kind of tension you'd expect, though. No, it wasn't between me and the noisy neighbors or the overly loud kids next door. It was between me and the HOA, Homeowners Association. They were everywhere, like a secret police force, lurking in the bushes with their clipboards, ready to pounce on any small infraction. But what really stood out was Karen. You know the type, the self-appointed neighborhood queen, the HOA's biggest fan, and the person who believes that the word rules is written in big, bold letters in the sky just for her. She didn't seem so bad at first. Just a woman in her 50s with too much time on her hands, wearing floral print dresses and always helping people out by telling them what they were doing wrong. At first, I didn't mind her. I was new, and she seemed like someone who wanted to help me fit into the neighborhood. She gave me the rundown on the important rules. No lawn ornaments after 9 p.m., no loud music after 8 p.m., and of course the classic, no packages left unattended. People might steal them, she'd warned me, in that annoying way people do when they're trying to sound wise. Now I should have known right there that something was off. People like Karen don't warn you for no reason. They warn you because they're watching and they're waiting for you to mess up. It all started with the first package. I ordered a new set of kitchen knives, nothing fancy, just some good quality stuff I needed for cooking. I was excited, tracking the package the entire day. It was supposed to arrive at 3 p.m., and sure enough, by the time I came home from work, there it was, right on my doorstep. I smiled, picked it up, and went inside. No drama, just a regular day. But then it happened again. A few days later, another package arrived, a book I'd ordered for my mom's birthday. I'd been tracking this one like a hawk. Same time, same delivery person. But when I opened my door, I found nothing. No package, just an empty porch. I was a little confused at first. Maybe I missed the delivery. Maybe the delivery guy had left it with a neighbor. I walked up and down the street, checking every house, but no one seemed to have it. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just a mistake. After all, packages get lost all the time, right? So I waited a few more days, and another package arrived. This one was even more important. It was a rare vinyl record I'd been waiting for. I was stoked. I couldn't wait to spin it on my record player. But you can guess what happened, right? Same thing, the package vanished. Now I was starting to get suspicious. Maybe I was just unlucky, but then the pattern was undeniable. Every time a package was delivered to my house, it disappeared, gone without a trace. And the worst part, the timing was too perfect. These weren't just random disappearances. These were packages that arrived when I wasn't home, only to be missing as soon as I got back. I started paying closer attention. One day, as I was pulling into the driveway after work, I noticed Karen outside picking up a package from the neighbor's porch across the street. She didn't seem to be in any rush, just casually strolling over to grab the package like it was her own. At that moment, I got that gut feeling. You know the one that makes you think, something's not right here. I wasn't sure, but I couldn't help but feel like something fishy was going on. My packages were vanishing, and Karen was always there, lurking around when I wasn't looking. She would be outside at exactly the right time, making it almost impossible for me to suspect anyone else. I did what any rational person would do. I started watching her. I know, it sounds crazy, but I had to. Every day I'd peek out from behind the blinds, making sure I could spot her whenever she went outside. I became that neighbor, the one who's always peering through the window, trying to solve a mystery like some detective in a cheesy crime novel. But I wasn't just spying on her because I had nothing better to do. No, I was trying to catch her in the act, and one day I did. I was sitting at my kitchen table, working on my laptop, when I saw it. Karen stepped out of her front door holding a package, a very familiar-looking package. I could feel my pulse quicken as I recognized it. It was the record I had ordered. My record. She was holding it. I watched her walk up the driveway to her porch, the edges of the package crinkling under her fingers. She glanced around, making sure no one was watching, before slipping it inside her house. At that moment, something inside me snapped. I couldn't believe it. This was the woman who had warned me about package thieves. This was the same woman who had smiled at me and said, "Don't leave your packages out, someone might take them." And now she was the one doing it. The audacity. I had been patient. I had tried to be the good neighbor, the one who played by the rules, but not anymore. This wasn't about a missing package anymore. This was about principle. This was about justice. And you know what they say, don't mess with someone's Amazon order. The next day, I decided to do something about it. I couldn't just let this go. I couldn't let Karen steal from me without some kind of consequence. And that's when the idea hit me. The perfect revenge. But before I get ahead of myself, let me tell you, nothing in this world, and I mean nothing, is more satisfying than the thought of getting back at someone who thinks they can get away with anything. And with Karen, I was about to give her a taste of her own medicine. The game was on. But first, I needed to make a plan. Something that would truly make her regret ever crossing me. Something that would make her wish she had never even thought about taking my packages. But that, my friend, is where the real fun begins. It's funny how quickly you can go from normal neighbor to obsessive investigator without even realizing it. I'd never planned to become one of those people who spends their evenings spying on their neighbors. But here I was, a full-on detective, and my case. A missing package. No, scratch that, missing packages. Plural, as in multiple. As in, I was now officially that person in the neighborhood watching every move Karen made like I was on a secret mission. And honestly, I didn't even feel bad about it. At first, I tried to brush off the whole thing. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe it was coincidence. But deep down, I knew there was something off about Karen. Every time I got home, the packages were gone. And somehow, Karen was always right there, hanging around her porch when the deliveries showed up. Maybe she was just really into lawn care. Maybe she loved plants, or her flower beds were her pride and joy. But that wasn't what I was seeing. No, what I was seeing was someone who had perfected the art of casually loitering around just when packages were being dropped off. And it wasn't like she was the only one who had packages stolen. I mean, people had talked about it before. The neighbor across the street, Mr. Jenkins, had even mentioned it once while we were getting our mail. "Packages keep disappearing around here," he'd said, scratching his head. "It's like the thief is picking and choosing which ones to take." And it wasn't just him. Others had mentioned it in passing too, but no one had done anything about it. I was starting to wonder if people just accepted it as part of suburban life. But not me. Not anymore. One evening, I decided to pay extra close attention. I figured if I was going to catch Karen, I had to be sneaky. So I made myself comfortable by the living room window, hiding behind the blinds like some amateur spy. I swear I could hear my heart thumping in my chest. But I was determined. I was going to figure this out once and for all. And then it happened. Just after 3 p.m., the delivery truck rolled up. I saw the familiar blue and yellow van park right in front of Karen's house. I couldn't see the driver, but I saw the delivery guy step out and walk toward my neighbor's porch. I leaned in closer, holding my breath. I knew something was about to happen. The driver placed the package on the porch, and as soon as he turned to leave, Karen stepped out of her house. Just like that, like she was waiting for it. She didn't even look around to check if anyone was watching, just casually walked up and grabbed the box. My pulse shot up. My suspicion had just gone from a hunch to something much, much darker. I was watching in horror as she took the package and disappeared back inside her house. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. This was a full-blown pattern. I could feel the anger building in me. She was stealing my packages, all of them. No one else in the neighborhood seemed to notice. Maybe they didn't want to get involved, or maybe they just didn't care enough to put the pieces together. But I did. I waited a few minutes, then I grabbed my shoes and rushed out the door, acting like I had just come home from work. I casually strolled past her house, pretending I hadn't seen anything, but inside I was fuming. I walked up to the porch as if nothing was out of the ordinary, and I peeked around the corner, trying to make sure Karen wasn't spying on me. The package was gone. I made my way back home with the uncomfortable realization that Karen was behind it all. I was dealing with a professional thief here. How had she managed to get away with it for so long? I mean, she was so smooth about it, so casual, so sneaky. It was almost impressive. I had to act fast. I couldn't just let this slide. But what could I do? Confront her. That would be a disaster. The last thing I wanted was a scene, especially with someone like Karen who probably thought she was invincible. No, I needed to think this through. I needed to come up with a plan, a clever plan that would make her regret ever messing with me. That night, as I sat down to eat my dinner, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept picturing Karen's smug face as she waltzed into her house with my package. Every time I thought about it, the anger surged back up inside me. I needed a way to get back at her, something clever, something she wouldn't expect. I was no detective, but I could at least figure out how to outsmart a package thief. It wasn't long before I realized what I had to do. A glitter bomb. I know it sounds ridiculous, but hear me out. Think about it. Karen was a woman who prided herself on her pristine, organized life. She was all about keeping up appearances. Imagine her walking into her house, opening one of my packages, and getting blasted with glitter everywhere, all over her clothes, all over her house. Heck, even in her hair. The image made me grin. It was perfect. So I started planning. I had to make sure the glitter bomb was just the right mix of glitter, chaos, and annoyance. It couldn't just be some lame prank. Oh no, it had to be the prank. It had to be so over the top that she'd never, ever forget it. I spent the next few days collecting supplies. Glitter, lots of it. Confetti, a little speaker that could blast annoying sounds, and of course a sturdy box. I spent hours putting it all together. Layers of glitter, wrapped in layers of paper, with a loud, obnoxious sound effect that would go off as soon as the box was opened. And just to make sure it was extra satisfying, I added a note on top that simply said, "I thought you'd enjoy the gift, Karen." By the time I was done, it was a masterpiece, a glitter-filled weapon of revenge. But I wasn't just sending it to her directly. I had a plan to make sure she took the bait. The next day, I placed the box on my front porch as if it was just another delivery. I made sure it looked exactly like one of those standard packages you'd get from Amazon or any other delivery service. Then I went inside and waited. I kept checking through the window every few minutes, watching for her. Sure enough, there she was, Karen, strolling out of her house, her eyes scanning the street like a hawk. She saw the package, and without hesitation, she walked over and snatched it up. It was like she couldn't resist. I had a feeling she thought it was one of her victims, and she was probably planning to take it inside like all the others. I barely could contain my excitement as I watched her walk back toward her house, completely unaware of the chaos she was about to unleash. I waited for what felt like an eternity, but finally, I saw her open the door and disappear inside. The moment I'd been waiting for. I could already imagine the glitter storm that was about to explode in her face. A storm of sparkles, sounds, and a big, fat dose of karma. This was just the beginning. I wasn't going to stop until she learned what happens when you mess with the wrong neighbor. Karen had no idea what was coming for her. And trust me, it was going to be glittery. The excitement was building. I could feel it buzzing in my veins. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The ultimate revenge was about to unfold, and Karen had no idea what was coming her way. I had spent the past few days planning the perfect glitter bomb, and now it was sitting on my front porch, just waiting to be discovered by the one person who truly deserved it. I know what you're thinking. A glitter bomb? Really? It sounds childish, right? Maybe even a little lame. But trust me when I say this. There is nothing more satisfying than imagining the look on Karen's face when she opens that box and gets blasted with glitter, confetti, and an obnoxious sound that will haunt her every time she tries to go to sleep. I spent hours perfecting the design. The box itself had to look like a normal, everyday package, nothing fancy, nothing suspicious. If Karen was going to fall for this, I couldn't make it too obvious. So I chose a simple cardboard box about the size of a standard delivery package. It was plain enough that she'd think it was just another random order. Inside, though, that was where the magic happened. I filled the box with layer upon layer of glitter, blue, gold, red, and silver. I wasn't going for subtlety. I wanted her to be buried in sparkles. I also tossed in some confetti for good measure, just to make sure she'd get the full experience of absolute chaos. And then I had the perfect little surprise, a tiny speaker that would play the most annoying sound effects imaginable. It was a mix of children laughing, a dog barking, and the sound of a car alarm blaring. It was perfect. But that wasn't all. I needed a little personal touch, something that would really make her feel the sting of betrayal. So I printed out a note typed in bold letters, "I thought you'd enjoy the gift, Karen." No explanations, no apologies, just pure, unfiltered payback. As I stood there looking at the glitter bomb I had crafted, I couldn't help but smile. I'd never felt so proud of something so petty. But honestly, it was just the right amount of petty. She deserved this. I didn't care how dramatic it seemed. What mattered was that Karen had crossed the line, and now she was going to pay for it in the most ridiculous way possible. The next morning, I could hardly contain my excitement. I woke up early, barely able to eat breakfast, my mind racing with thoughts of the chaos about to unfold. I checked the package one last time, ensuring everything was in place. The box was perfect. Everything was ready. I waited for the perfect moment to set the trap. The delivery truck was expected to drop off a package around 3 p.m., Corinne's usual time to be in the area. Sure enough, at exactly 3:05 p.m., I saw her. She was standing at her front door, peering out like some kind of neighborhood watch captain. As soon as the delivery truck pulled away, she stepped outside, scanning the street. My heart was pounding. I held my breath. This was it. Corinne's eyes locked on the package sitting innocently on my porch. She didn't hesitate for a second. She walked straight over, her hands reaching out with that familiar smug look on her face. She was practically salivating at the thought of swiping yet another package. I watched her grab it with a sense of satisfaction I couldn't even describe. It was like she knew it was meant for her, like she was the only one who mattered. She carefully tucked the box under her arm and sauntered back into her house, a smile spreading across her face. I could hardly contain my glee. I felt like a villain in a movie, watching from the shadows as my carefully crafted plan began to unfold. I knew she was already planning her little victory dance inside. But what she didn't know was that her celebration was about to come to a screeching halt. I waited, counting the minutes. I didn't want to get too cocky, but I couldn't help myself. This was too perfect. My revenge was almost within reach. 20 minutes passed, then 30. I was practically vibrating with anticipation. I peeked through the blinds just enough to see her house, my eyes trained on the window where I knew she'd be. And then it happened. The door opened, and there she was, standing in the doorway. She took the package out to the living room where she must have planned to open it. She set it down on her coffee table, probably thinking she'd finally gotten away with something. The smugness in her posture made me want to laugh. She had no idea what was about to hit her. I watched her slowly reach down, her fingers brushing the tape on the box. The moment she lifted the lid, it was like the world slowed down. Boom! The sound went off first, a loud, piercing screech that sent an electric thrill through me. Then, as if on cue, the glitter exploded out of the box like a firework. It flew in every direction, gold, silver, blue, and red shimmering in the air. It was as if the universe had decided that Corinne's house would be the new home for a glittery galaxy. The confetti followed suit, bursting out in a flurry of colors, landing all over her furniture, the floor, and, of course, her clothes. But that wasn't the best part. As the glitter rained down on her, the little speaker kicked into gear. The sound of children's laughter, a dog barking incessantly, and the blaring of a car alarm filled the air. It was chaotic. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. Corinne's reaction was everything I'd hoped for. At first, she just stared at the mess, her eyes wide with disbelief. I could see her mouth moving, but no words came out. She was in shock. But then it hit her. The glitter was everywhere, stuck in her hair, all over her clothes, and scattered across her precious white carpet. She was covered in sparkles from head to toe. She looked like a walking Christmas ornament. And then the sound effects started to get to her. The laughter kept ringing in her ears. The dog wouldn't stop barking. The car alarm wailed on. It was like a nightmare she couldn't escape. She started swatting at the glitter, flailing her arms around, as though she could somehow wish it all away. But it just kept spreading, sticking to her skin, her furniture, and her life. She couldn't stop it. At that moment, I felt something inside me. Not just satisfaction, but pure, unfiltered joy. This was it. This was the moment when Corinne realized that not only had she stolen my packages, but she had also messed with the wrong person. I could hear her shouting now, cursing under her breath, trying to clean up the mess. But no matter how much she wiped, the glitter didn't stop. It was in her shoes. It was in her hair. It was in places she probably didn't even know existed. I wanted to go over and watch her suffer firsthand, but I restrained myself. I knew I had to give her time to wallow in the glittery chaos I'd unleashed. I didn't know how long it would take her to clean it up, but I knew one thing for sure. Corinne would never forget the day she messed with me. She could try to laugh it off, but deep down I knew she was fuming. And the best part? She couldn't get mad at anyone but herself. She had stolen my packages, and now she was getting a glittery taste of her own medicine. As I sat back and watched her struggle, I couldn't help but feel a little proud of myself. I had outsmarted her at her own game. This wasn't just a glitter bomb, this was justice. I watched from my window as Corinne flailed around inside her house, desperately trying to salvage what was left of her dignity, and the glitter that was now embedded in every single crevice of her life. To be honest, I was trying my best not to laugh out loud, But you have to understand, this was the moment I'd been dreaming of. Corinne had taken my packages, and now she was getting exactly what she deserved, except it wasn't exactly what I had expected. It was better. Much better. At first, she didn't seem to realize the full scope of the disaster that had just fallen on her. She stood in the middle of her living room, staring down at the colorful disaster, blinking like she couldn't believe her own eyes. You could practically hear her thoughts screaming, "What just happened?" She bent down to pick up the box, but of course, glitter spilled out everywhere. That's the thing with glitter, it doesn't just stay in one place. Oh no, it spreads. It's like the herpes of the crafting world. You try to get rid of it and it just keeps coming back. Then came the sound effects. The little speaker that I'd stuffed into the box, blaring dog barks, car alarms, and laughing children, seemed to throw her into full-blown panic mode. The way she swatted at the air like she was trying to fight off an invisible swarm of bees was almost comical. "What the hell is this?" she screamed, stumbling backward as more glitter floated around her like a glittery storm cloud. Her frantic movements were just the icing on the cake. Watching her try to clean it up was like watching someone try to mop up an ocean with a paper towel. She started grabbing handfuls of paper towels, but they were useless against the glitter storm. Every time she swiped at it, she only made it worse, like smearing a tiny speck of dirt into a huge stain. At some point, she stopped trying to clean it up and just sat down on the floor, absolutely covered in glitter. Her face was a mix of rage and disbelief, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I reminded myself why I was doing this. She had stolen from me not just once but several times. And now, she was getting exactly what she deserved. I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction as I watched her helplessly wave her arms through the air, trying to brush off the glitter like it was some kind of magic dust that would just disappear. It wasn't going to disappear. Not anytime soon, at least. And for that, I was deeply grateful. I took a step back from the window, stretching out on the couch like I had just watched the best show on TV. And in a way, I had. This was better than anything Netflix could provide. This was real, raw drama. But I couldn't stay in hiding forever. I needed to see her face to face. I needed to savor the moment of her realizing just who had done this to her. So I grabbed my coat, slipped out the door, and started walking over to her house. My heart was racing. Not with nerves. No, this wasn't about nerves. This was about pure, unadulterated victory. As I approached her house, I could already hear her inside, cursing under her breath. "This is insane. I'm going to kill whoever did this," she screamed. Her voice was tinged with panic. She was losing it. I approached her front door and knocked. It took a few moments, but eventually I heard her footsteps. I tried my best not to grin like an idiot, but it was hard to contain myself. The satisfaction was overwhelming. When the door finally opened, Corinne's face was a masterpiece of frustration and disbelief. Her hair was a mess, her clothes were covered in glitter, and she looked like she had just come out of a war zone. A glitter war zone. "What do you want?" she snapped, her eyes narrowing at me. She looked me up and down like I was the last person she wanted to see. I took a deep breath and looked at her, trying my best to keep my expression neutral. "Hey, Corinne," I said, acting casual, like I hadn't just turned her life into a sparkly nightmare. "I saw you, got my package." Her eyes flickered for a moment like she was trying to process what I was saying. Then she narrowed them again. "Your package? What are you talking about? You think I took it?" I shrugged, pretending to act clueless. "Well, I'm just saying, you did grab that package from my porch earlier, right? Just wanted to make sure it was delivered safely." I couldn't resist the sarcasm in my voice. It was like the words just slipped out before I could stop them. Her face twisted into a snarl. "You think I stole your damn package?" she spat, her voice low with fury. "I don't need to steal from you. I don't need anything from you." I smiled. "You sure about that? Because it looks to me like you've been taking more than just a package or two." I couldn't resist leaning in, letting the words sink in. "And just so you know, that was my package. I wasn't sure if you knew that, but now you do." Her eyes burned with anger and she took a step toward me. "Listen here, you little—" I raised my hand, cutting her off. "It's okay, Corinne. No need to get worked up. I know you're just under a lot of stress." I motioned toward the glittery mess surrounding her. "It can be hard to keep up with everything, like keeping track of your mishaps." For a moment, she just stood there, seething. Her face was red, her chest rising and falling with every breath. But I wasn't backing down. I was enjoying this too much. Finally, she sneered. You think this is funny, huh? You think this is some kind of joke? She clenched her fists. You have no idea who you're messing with. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Because it seems like I have a pretty good idea. I pointed at the glitter that was still clinging to her like a badge of shame. I mean, I don't know anyone else who would react like this after getting a little sparkle in their life. Her eyes flared with rage, and for a second I thought she might explode. But then she took a deep breath and stepped back. You'll regret this, she hissed. This isn't over, I'll make sure you pay for this. I smiled and gave her a little wave. Sure, Karen, you can try, but I've got to say I think I'm going to be just fine. And with that, I turned and walked away, savoring every step. I knew this wasn't the end. Karen would come up with some plan to get back at me, but whatever she threw my way, I was ready. After all, I had just turned her house into a glittery battlefield, and I was pretty sure she wasn't going to forget that anytime soon. As I walked back to my house, I couldn't help but feel a little smug. The first strike had been a success. Karen had learned the hard way what happens when you mess with someone who isn't afraid to fight back. And trust me, this wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for now, I was savoring my victory. The glitter bomb had been just the beginning. You know that feeling you get when you think you've won, when you feel like you've outsmarted someone and you're finally at peace? Yeah, that feeling lasted for about, 5 minutes. I'd done it, I'd pulled off the perfect prank. I'd gotten Karen exactly where I wanted her. She had stolen my packages, and now she was covered in glitter, surrounded by confetti, and drowning in the sound of a dog barking for what felt like eternity. I was expecting some grumbling, maybe a few threats, but I thought she'd at least know better than to push it further. I should have known better. Turns out, Karen wasn't the type to sit back and take the loss gracefully. No, she was the kind of person who would escalate things, and escalate she did. It started a few days after my glitter bomb strike. I was still basking in the glow of my victory when I received a letter from the HOA. That's right, the Homeowners Association. Apparently, I was in violation of the neighborhood rules. The letter was formal, all neat and official-looking, but the message couldn't have been clearer. I had been reported for harassing a neighbor and for causing a disturbance. I read the letter twice just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. I had no idea what Karen had told them, but I had a pretty good guess. Of course, she'd made it sound like I was the villain here. There's a neighbor harassing me with prank packages, causing trouble in the neighborhood, she probably said, playing the innocent victim role to perfection. And the HOA? Well, of course, they sided with her. They always did. I was the newcomer, and Karen was practically their queen. The letter said I had to attend a hearing and explain my side of things. They wanted me to come in front of the HOA board, and I could already picture Karen sitting there, smug as ever, watching me squirm. My first reaction was to laugh. Seriously, she was trying to get me into trouble for a glitter bomb. But then I stopped laughing. I realized this wasn't just about glitter anymore. Karen had taken this to a whole new level, and she wasn't going to stop until she got me kicked out of the neighborhood. I wasn't about to let that happen. If Karen thought she could mess with me and get away with it, she had another thing coming. I spent the next few days getting ready for the hearing. I knew the HOA wasn't going to be on my side, but I wasn't going to let them bulldoze me. I needed a plan, a clever one. I started gathering evidence. I had video footage of the packages being delivered to my house, all the times I'd tried to get them back, and the moments when Karen had blatantly taken my deliveries. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I also had the texts and emails from other neighbors who had complained about Karen's rule enforcement and how she often meddled in other people's business. I had proof that she was a constant nuisance in the neighborhood. And then I decided to add a little extra twist. If I was going to win this hearing, I needed to make sure I made Karen look like the overdramatic, obsessive neighbor she was. I needed the perfect evidence. So I set up a camera. It wasn't hard. I placed the camera in a discreet spot on my porch where I knew she'd be lurking. I knew she couldn't resist poking around whenever a package was dropped off. I wasn't going to let her catch me, but I was going to catch her in the act. This time, there would be no denying it. The day of the hearing came, and I was as ready as I could be. I put on my best, I'm innocent, face, armed with my evidence. I walked into the HOA meeting with the confidence of someone who knew they were about to drop a bombshell. As I sat in the waiting room, I could hear Karen's voice before I even saw her. She was talking to the board, telling them about how I had been harassing her. I gritted my teeth, listening to her spin her little sob story. I wanted to burst in and call her out right there, but I knew I had to be patient. My time would come. Finally, the door opened and I was called into the room. The HOA board was sitting at a long table, all serious faces and sharp suits. And then there was Karen, sitting in the front, acting like she was the queen of the neighborhood. Her eyes met mine, and I could practically hear the smugness radiating off her. "Please have a seat," the board member said, gesturing to the chair in front of them. I sat down, trying not to show how much I was about to enjoy this. Karen was sitting there with her arms crossed, looking at me like she was about to strike. But she didn't know what was coming. The first board member spoke up. "So, we're here today to discuss the complaint filed by Ms. Karen Thompson. She claims that you've been causing disruptions in the neighborhood, specifically targeting her with prank packages. How do you respond to these allegations?" I took a deep breath and leaned forward, keeping my voice calm. "Well, thank you for having me. I'm here today because I want to clear up some misunderstandings. Yes, I did send a package to Karen. It was a prank, but it was a harmless one. She has been taking my packages from my porch repeatedly, and I have proof of that." I pulled out my phone and showed them the video footage of Karen taking my package. The entire room fell silent. Karen's face turned bright red, and for a split second she looked like she might explode. But I wasn't done. I played the second video I had, one that showed Karen practically sneaking up to my porch, looking around like a thief in the night. I made sure the audio was loud enough so everyone could hear her little casual movements. "This is just one of many instances where Karen took my packages without my permission. It wasn't a prank to her, but it certainly felt like one to me," I said, locking eyes with her. Karen opened her mouth to protest, but the board cut her off. "Please, Ms. Thompson, let the person speak," one of the board members said. I continued. "As for the prank, yes, it was a bit over the top, but it was a reaction to her repeated thefts. I'm not here to make enemies, I just wanted to get my packages back. But this escalated quickly when Karen took the matter to the HOA and started telling lies about me." Karen stood up, shaking with rage. "That's not what happened," she shouted. "You've been tormenting me for weeks, stealing my peace and quiet. I'm the one who's been harassed." I stayed calm. "Karen, you've been the one causing disruptions. You've made everyone's life miserable with your constant complaints. I'm not the only one who feels this way. Other neighbors have come forward with their concerns about you. They're afraid to speak out, but I'm here to tell the truth." At this point, I had the full attention of the board. I could see Karen's face going pale. She didn't expect this. She didn't expect me to come prepared with evidence. I had her cornered. The board members exchanged glances. Finally, one of them spoke. "We've reviewed the evidence, and it's clear that there have been multiple incidents of package theft, with Ms. Thompson being the primary suspect. We also understand that a prank, while not ideal, was a reaction to repeated theft." Karen's jaw dropped. "You're siding with him, after all I've been through." The board chairperson spoke firmly. "We recommend a warning for both parties. However, it's clear that Ms. Thompson's actions were in violation of neighborhood trust. We'll be monitoring the situation closely." Karen stood there speechless as the board wrapped up the hearing. I smiled inwardly. I had won. Not only had I proven that Karen was the one causing all the trouble, but I had also exposed her to the entire neighborhood. She could no longer hide behind her perfect neighbor facade. As I walked out of the meeting room, I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. The escalation had been worth it. I'd outsmarted Karen, and now I was one step closer to getting my peace back. This war wasn't over yet, but I was starting to like my chances. I thought the hearing would be the climax. I thought that after the board sided with me, I'd have a moment of peace. Maybe Karen would back off, maybe the neighborhood would calm down and I could get back to my life. I was wrong. If anything, the real battle had only just begun. Karen wasn't done yet. Oh no, the look in her eyes as she left that hearing, that wasn't defeat, that was a challenge. And as I was about to learn, when Karen sets her mind on something, she doesn't let go. She wasn't going to just accept her loss and slink away into the shadows. No, she had to make my life miserable. Again. This time, though, she wasn't going to do it alone. It all started the day after the HOA hearing. I was sitting in my living room, catching up on some work when I heard a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated. But then, I peeked through the peephole and saw something that made my heart drop. 3 members of the HOA standing on my front porch. My stomach churned. This wasn't good. I opened the door trying to keep my cool. "Hello," I said, forcing a polite smile. "Good afternoon, sir," said Mr. Jensen, the president of the HOA. He was a middle-aged man who looked like he spent most of his time either complaining about lawn care or adjusting his perfectly combed hair. We need to discuss an ongoing matter. I didn't need to ask which matter. It could only be one thing, Karen. Come on in, I said, stepping back to let them in. I wanted to hear this. I wanted to know exactly what Karen had been up to. They stepped inside, and Mr. Jensen wasted no time getting to the point. We're here because we've received a formal complaint from Ms. Thompson. She claims that the situation with the package prank has escalated further. She says she's feeling unsafe and harassed in her own home. I blinked. Unsafe, harassed. I couldn't stop myself from laughing. Unsafe. She's the one who's been stealing my packages, and now she's playing the victim. One of the other board members, Mrs. Harris, held up her hand. We understand your frustration, but Ms. Thompson has stated that she feels this situation is being personally directed at her, and she has requested additional action be taken. I couldn't believe it. What kind of action? I asked. What do you expect me to do? I've done nothing wrong. Karen stole my packages. I proved it in front of all of you. Mr. Jensen cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. The HOA board has decided to issue a final warning to both parties. We want to resolve this peacefully. We don't want this escalating further. My blood boiled, peacefully. There was no way this was going to be peaceful. She had been tormenting me for weeks, and now, because of some fabricated sob story, I was being treated like the bad guy. And what exactly does this final warning entail? I asked, trying to keep my tone level. Mrs. Harris spoke up. It means no further pranks or actions against Ms. Thompson. If there are any more complaints, fines will be issued, and if it continues, we will take legal action. I was stunned. I had already been through the hearing, and now this. The HOA, the very same people who had sided with me just days ago, were now caving to Karen's manipulation. I was furious, but I tried not to show it. I get it, I said, my voice tight. So I'm supposed to just let her keep stealing from me and get away with it. Just take this warning seriously, Mr. Jensen said. We all want this neighborhood to stay peaceful. That's our goal. Yeah, the neighborhood was peaceful, until Karen decided to make everyone's life a nightmare. Fine, I said, gritting my teeth. I'll keep the peace. But in my head, I was already planning my next move. I was done playing by her rules. I needed to outsmart her again, and I needed to do it fast. As soon as they left, I slammed the door behind them, feeling the frustration build inside me. Keep the peace. This wasn't about peace anymore. It was about justice. I couldn't let Karen think she could manipulate the HOA and get away with it. I had to do something, but I needed to be clever. The problem was, I didn't want to go overboard again. I didn't want to end up back in the HOA's crosshairs. I had to find another way to show Karen that she couldn't win. It wasn't until later that night, after sitting and stewing in my anger for hours, that I came up with a new plan. I was going to take a different approach. This time, it wouldn't be a prank. It wouldn't be something that could easily be turned into a complaint. This time, I was going to expose Karen for what she really was, without breaking any rules. I spent the next few days gathering evidence in a much quieter way. I didn't want to give Karen any reason to report me again, but I knew I needed to collect more proof of her stealing packages. I started setting up small, discreet cameras, not just on my porch, but also on a few other neighbors' porches where Karen had been seen lurking around. I made sure the cameras were hidden well enough that she wouldn't see them. I also did some digging into Karen's past. I knew she was involved in the HOA, but I suspected there was more to her than just a meddling neighbor. Sure enough, I found a few things that didn't sit well with me. It turned out Karen had been involved in a number of small-time scams in the past. Nothing major, just enough to raise some eyebrows. I found a few old online threads where she had been accused of defrauding neighbors for special services, like hiring unlicensed contractors to fix things around the neighborhood. People had complained, but nothing had ever been proven. It was the kind of thing that flew under the radar, but now I saw it for what it was. Karen wasn't just a busybody. She was a manipulative, shady person who had probably been getting away with things for years. I felt the rage bubbling up again. How had I not seen this before? She had everyone fooled, even the HOA. But now that I knew her game, I was ready to expose it. My plan was simple: use her own tactics against her. I'd start talking to more neighbors, especially the ones she'd wronged, and get them to speak up. But this time, I wouldn't be doing it publicly. No, I was going to collect private testimonies, make sure there was a pattern of bad behavior. Once I had enough evidence, I was going to bring it to the HOA, and this time, Karen wouldn't be able to wiggle her way out of it. I spent the next few weeks gathering everything I could, and along the way, I learned something even more interesting. It wasn't just Karen stealing my packages. She'd been taking other people's packages too, especially those from online orders. People were talking more and the more I listened, the more I realized Karen had been using her position in the HOA to cover her tracks. She'd been setting up rules that kept everyone in line, while she quietly took what she wanted. When I finally had everything I needed, I knew I had to act. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about the whole neighborhood. And Karen was going to find out exactly how it felt to be caught in her own lies. I set up a meeting with the HOA again, this time armed with more than just video evidence. This time, I had a story that could bring her down once and for all. The next round was coming, and this time I was going to win. And I wasn't going to stop until I did. I didn't want to waste time, not anymore. I had all the evidence I needed. I had the videos, the testimonies, and even the records that showed Karen's shady dealings. This wasn't just about one stolen package anymore. This was about exposing her for who she really was, someone who had been manipulating the entire neighborhood for years, and I was going to make sure everyone knew it. I took a deep breath as I walked toward the HOA office, my heart racing. This was it, the final showdown. I had everything I needed to put an end to Karen's reign of terror. There would be no turning back now. I had scheduled the meeting for the following morning, making sure that the board would be there to hear me out. I wasn't going to give Karen a chance to twist things again. This time, I would take control. When I walked into the HOA office, I was greeted by the familiar, sterile setting of beige walls and glossy corporate furniture. But this time, it didn't matter. It was just a backdrop to the bigger picture. As I entered the conference room, I saw the same faces from before, Mr. Jensen, Mrs. Harris, and a few other board members I hadn't met. And of course, sitting front and center was Karen. She looked almost too calm, like she knew something I didn't. I couldn't help but feel a little bit of tension in the air as I took my seat. Her eyes met mine, and there it was, the same smug look she'd given me before. But I wasn't intimidated this time. I had nothing to fear. Mr. Jensen cleared his throat, his eyes darting between Karen and me. "Thank you for coming. We're here today to address the ongoing situation with Ms. Thompson and Mr. Maxwell. As you all know, there have been several complaints, and we need to find a resolution." I nodded politely. "Thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak." Karen didn't even try to hide her grin. She was just sitting there, arms crossed, acting like she had already won. It was almost laughable. "I'm sure," I began, my voice steady, "that everyone is aware of the claims made by Ms. Thompson, claims that I have been harassing her and causing disturbances in the neighborhood. I've already explained my side during the last meeting, and I thought that would be the end of it." Karen opened her mouth to speak, but Mr. Jensen held up his hand. "We've heard your side, Mr. Maxwell. We're here today to discuss what happens next." I leaned forward, pulling out a stack of papers from my folder. "Well, I have a few things to discuss. First of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that Ms. Thompson has not been entirely truthful about the situation. In fact, I've gathered quite a bit of evidence that shows a pattern of behavior from her that no one in this neighborhood should tolerate." The room went silent, and Karen's smile faltered for a second. I could see the anxiety creeping into her expression, but I didn't stop. I knew this was my moment. "Over the past few months," I continued, "I've collected video footage and eyewitness accounts that show Ms. Thompson repeatedly taking packages from my porch. Not just mine, either. Other neighbors have come forward to confirm similar incidents. It seems she's been selectively stealing packages from several homes while hiding behind the safety of HOA rules." I slid the first video across the table. It showed Karen walking up to my porch and taking my package without hesitation. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that she had taken it. "I also have footage from other neighbors," I added, pulling out more videos. Each one was another nail in her coffin. The board watched in silence, their faces growing more serious with every clip. "And as for the complaints that I've been causing trouble, well, it seems that the real troublemaker has been Ms. Thompson," I said, letting the weight of my words sink in. "She's used her position in the HOA to manipulate and intimidate people. I've found records of complaints about her taking advantage of her power, pushing her own agenda, and even using the HOA to cover up her own illegal activities. Karen's face went pale. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. The board was still watching the footage, absorbed in the evidence. I've also spoken with several neighbors who have shared their stories about Ms. Thompson's behavior, I said, giving them a moment to process. She's been bullying people for years, dictating how they maintain their lawns, how they decorate their homes, and even accusing people of breaking rules that don't exist. She's used her position to control others, and that's exactly what she's been doing with me. At this point, Mrs. Harris looked at Karen. Is any of this true, Ms. Thompson? Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. I don't know what he's talking about, she stammered, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. He's just trying to turn everyone against me. I've been a good neighbor. I've helped this community. I couldn't help myself. Oh, you've been helping, all right, by stealing my packages and ruining everyone else's peace of mind. The room was quiet. There was no denying it now. Karen had nowhere to hide. Mr. Jensen, who had been silent up until this point, cleared his throat. Ms. Thompson, we take these allegations very seriously, and it seems you've provided us with no reasonable explanation for your actions. Karen's face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous. I'm being harassed. You can't let him do this to me. But it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming. The board couldn't ignore it anymore. We'll need to discuss this further, Mr. Jensen said, but there was a finality in his tone that made it clear what was coming. For now, we're putting a temporary suspension on your HOA privileges, Ms. Thompson. You will not be allowed to interfere with neighborhood affairs until further notice. If the evidence proves true, we will consider more permanent measures. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. Her face twisted in frustration, but she knew she'd been caught. There was no way to spin this. As the board continued to discuss the next steps, I leaned back in my chair, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. This was it. I had won. Karen had been exposed for who she really was, a thief, a manipulator, and a bully. And now the neighborhood knew it too. When the meeting finally ended, the board members shook my hand and thanked me for bringing the situation to light. But the best part was when Mr. Jensen turned to Karen one last time. You've been warned, Ms. Thompson. We'll be watching closely from here on out. Karen didn't even respond. She just stormed out of the room, her heels clicking angrily on the floor. I walked out after her, a sense of victory filling me. I had faced down the worst neighbor anyone could have and come out on top. The glitter bomb, the fake complaints, the manipulation, it was all behind me now. As I stepped out of the building and into the fresh air, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had fought for what was right, and I had won. I didn't need to watch Karen anymore. She had lost her power in the neighborhood, and me, I could finally relax. But there was one more thing I had to do. The next day, I made sure to leave a small box on her doorstep. It wasn't anything huge, just a simple note that said, "Thanks for all the glittery memories, Karen." I couldn't resist. It was the perfect finishing touch. As I walked away from her house, I knew one thing for sure. The war was over. And justice had been served.